going to talk to you about something that I kind of came into myself as something that I didn't want to use, that we kind of avoid. As bass players, we kind of avoid the plectrum, the pick. And I don't know if it comes back to us, I think, personally, and I can only speak of my personal experience, was that whenever I thought of a pick, I thought of guitar players. And we've always been on this adventure to separate ourselves from guitarists. There's a few of us that kind of dabble between both. And there's some of us that have never been a guitar player. I've never been a guitar player. I've only ever been a bass player. And I came in playing bass and was always told as a young child that picks were for guitar players. Don't use a pick. Always use your fingers. Slap. No problem with that. That's great. Pick, on the other hand, was always given to me as you don't want to do that. That's for guitar players or for bad bass players. I think that niche idea is kind of ending, and I think with some of the amazing bass players out there that do use picks, for instance, when we speak of I think of Anthony Jackson, For the Love of Money. I think of Bobby Vega. Bobby Vega has a really unique pick style that some other players have mimicked and done some really cool techniques developing that as well. Monk Montgomery. Monk Montgomery is one of those bass players in the jazz world that we should think about a lot, but we tend to single him out for some reason, but we should go back and pay attention to him. Steve Swallow, another great jazz bass player. But we also have Chris Squire and a number of other rock bass players who've delved deeply into the pick. Part of it's because the pick offers us a unique approach to a sound that we normally don't get with our fingers. Our fingers, we can get a lot of tones. But why limit yourself if you have an option? It's like, well, I'm going to build a house, I only have a hammer, but you need a drill. Well, I'm not going to use a drill because I don't use drills, I only use hammers. Why think that way? I think the opportunity here is for us to expand our palette as musical painters to look at other options and other colors that we can apply to our sound. Like I said, I'm kind of new to the pick myself. I've only really dabbled in it in the last couple of years, listening to guys like Tim LaFay and bass players who really have a really like a mastery of it. And you always think of it, I always thought of it, it's something easy, leave it for the guitar players, or the bad bass players. And bad is really, thinking of bad is really, as you age, myself, I think of that as a really juvenile way to approach that. And now when I think of pick players, I'm listening for their tone, their dynamics, their approach, how they play, what they're doing with it. There are a bunch of amazing bass players out there. Mike Gordon has a really unique pick approach. So what I have here is a slew of different picks. Because I said, I've also been going through this journey trying to find what works for me. We all kind of start with this really thick one, and we think, bass players, you have to use a thick pick because heavy, thick strings. Yes and no. A friend of mine, Sean Cav, showed me his, and he's got one of those teardrop ones that he uses, which is cool. That's great. What I'm going to recommend is I kind of went through this realm, and especially now that I've been playing with a bass 6, using it for some stuff, is that I've kind of worked my way backwards to almost a lighter pick. And I was kind of settling here for this, which is a medium thickness. Now, you can see the thickness of these different picks. I don't know if you can really grab that in the video, but thin, way thin, almost like fingernail thickness, all the way up. Now, with this journey here, I always kind of played through and have a bowl full of picks, that even thumb picks, going back to Dominic DiPiazza, where he was doing that technique with the thumb pick and the fingers, which was blew my mind back in the day. But I kind of found myself coming back to this thin pick right here. It's pretty bendy. I like that. And most of us, I didn't even know how to hold a pick. So I had to kind of come back around and think about, well, how do I approach this? And I know with my students, because it's come up as a topic now several times, well, I want to get that technique. How do I apply that? And you'll have people that will hold it like this. They'll put it in their fingers like this, or you can use it as an extension. I myself, for my technique that I kind of like with it, is I'll grab the pick, I'll put it here, and I'll put it between the fingers like this, so that my palm is still able, so if I want to, I can mute the string. So if I'm doing something like this, where I'm using the fleshy part of my palm to mute the string while I'm still playing on the string with the pick. I can do that with my fingers too and my thumb, but the pick definitely gives a different tonal, gives more of a percussive sound. It gives us more of a percussive sound. Now, there is a couple different ways that you can approach to the movement. Whereas, like we see, you know, the windmill kind of thing happening with guitar players who are showing off. But I think for myself, and the way I would approach this is, I don't want big movements. The same thing for my fingers is I want small movements, because small movements require less energy. I can play longer. Also, I found that, you know, if I do big movements with the pick, I'm going to hit a lot of strings I don't want to hit. So what I've been trying to do is really come in and control my movements. So I'm doing smaller movements, and I'm almost using that same floating thumb technique, but with the pick, whereas I'm sliding my hand up and down as I approach those strings. So I'm moving back and forth, and my pick attack is actually a twist of the wrist. It's almost like that hang loose kind of thing, which, you know, if you're doing that slap, you might be doing that if you're doing up and down versus thumb through, double thumping. But with this, what I'm doing is I'm kind of moving my wrist back and forth. So by allowing my palm to move back and forth, I can kind of control the attack of the string as well. So I have that cut for the percussive element with it. So in a situation where it's a very thick sounding music where I need to cut through, the pick is sometimes the best option. So let's break this down. So the biggest thing is finding the pick that works for you. Go to your local guitar store or go online, strings.com, something like that. Find a bunch of picks. I would say pick one of every thickness and try the one that works for you. See which one works, because I know I've changed a lot, because this was my go-to for a while, and this is a little bit stiffer. It's not quite as thin as this one is, but I like to play with it. And once you get comfortable with that movement, bringing the pick, now again, there are guys like I know, like Chris Squire would flip it and play with the round part, and almost had it mesh against his thumb, so it's just the edge. I kind of like to let it out a little bit. And again, you know, what works for you is going to be different from what works for somebody else. So getting that technique is going to be the big thing. So that's that. What I like to start with is find where it fits in your fingers, find a comfortable grip. And what I have is, so it's almost facing the same direction as my fingers pointed. See where my nail is right there? So the tip of the pick is pointed out there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that twisting motion with my wrist. And then the other part of that is what I'm doing is I'm muting the palm, using the palm of my hand, muting with the palm of my hand to get that other part of that technique. So as I move my hand up, so this is almost like a connection to that floating thumb, is that the palm of the hand is going to move around so that you have that control. Now you can, you know, pull your palm up off the string, and you're going to get a brighter tone and more sustain. And again, this also applies if you're using flat wounds, round wounds, or whatever wounds you're using. So for me in this case, I'm using flat wounds. So my flat wounds are my strings on here that I'm using, and I'm grabbing the pick like this. Now this lesson is all about the pick. It's not about the left hand at all. Finding that movement, getting your hand, starting with just up and down strokes on that string, find what's comfortable, lift the palm up, put the palm down so it's touching the string, lift it back up. Now, the closer that you are to the bridge, the less mute you'll have. The farther out you go, the more dead the string is, so we want to stay kind of back towards the bridge. But just kind of play around, doing up and down strokes on each string. And I might leave these fingers hang out actually too. Almost like my training wheels. that takes a while just to get comfortable with is the separation of the string to your fingers. I always felt like that was a stumbling block for myself, was getting just used to having something in my fingers that I was hitting the string with. So take your time with it. Take your time, move slowly through it. Doesn't need to be fast. It's just about getting comfortable with the pick. So this was really kind of just introducing yourself to the pick. You can apply, once you feel comfortable with this, apply some of your other lessons. Try your warm-ups with it. And try getting that part of your toolbox. It's part of your paintbrushes, right? This is Steve the Bass Guy with Bass Musician Magazine. Thanks for hanging out. If you enjoyed this lesson today, make sure you subscribe. And also, if you have more questions, email me at stevethebassguy@yahoo.com. If you enjoyed these lessons, make sure that you subscribe and check back frequently. And if you have any other questions or any topics that you'd like for me to talk about, shoot me an email. I'd love to chat with you about it. Thanks for hanging out. Keep picking.